President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed regional issues, including the situation in Libya and the developments in the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam crisis. During the call, President al-Sisi told Prime Minister Johnson that Egypt aspires to enhance mutual cooperation with the UK in various fields, particularly technology transfer and localization, as well as strengthening political consultation and coordination on regional and international issues of mutual interest. Presidential spokesman Bassem Radi said in a statement that Prime Minister Johnson expressed his keenness to keep in touch with the Egyptian president to enhance consultation and coordination on various regional and international issues. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister voiced appreciation for the pivotal role Egypt plays under the leadership of President al-Sisi towards settling the Libyan issue, in addition to its efforts to help push the political path in Libya and restore its state institutions. He also praised the role Egypt plays to support and consolidate peace and stability in the Middle East and Africa, voicing his aspiration to support and develop bilateral relations with Egypt on all levels. President al-Sisi praised the remarkable momentum witnessed in the bilateral relations between the two countries, stressing Egypt's aspiration to enhance political and security coordination with the UK on various files of common interest. Egypt has been pushing for a political settlement in Libya for years, calling for a ceasefire, a complete disarming of militias, an end to foreign intervention in the country, and a fair distribution of wealth between various regions within the country. The presidential spokesman said both leaders also discussed cooperation between the two countries and means to strengthen bilateral relations between them in all fields, especially in the fields of economy, investment and security, and in the sectors of health, education and energy.
Right, welcome back. And as I said at the very beginning, we'll be speaking about Egyptian regional and continental role in light of its geopolitical position and in light of the whole and current challenging threats and challenges facing Egypt, facing the Arab world, and facing Africa at large. Let me welcome here Ms. Maissa Khattab, political researcher. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, let me start first with how do you assess the Egyptian helm, or let me say the Egyptian role that it has been playing since ever, regional and continental?
I mean, Egypt has a very important geostrategic role in Africa and the Middle East, obviously on account of its geographic place, the Suez Canal, the access to the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. So these are factors that are never going to change, obviously, plus the population, one of the biggest in Africa and one of the biggest armies. So these are, with President el-Sisi's continued improvement of the infrastructure inside of the country, which attracts investments, it's sort of, it's on a positive path, I would say.
Yes, indeed. However, that puts a burden on its shoulder. It raises big role in maintaining peace and security of not just Egypt, but rather all the area around. How do you view the Egyptian efforts in this domain?
I agree. Egypt has right now the biggest challenge, I would say, is the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which impacts obviously Sudan as well as Egypt, and it's yet another red line that President el-Sisi has been very clear about, that we will not back down as Egyptians. This is a lifeline, this is a national security issue. So this is not something that will be that will stay in the back burner, I would say. It's going to be front and center this year. Libya, of course, is something that Egypt is going to continue to be involved in. Thankfully, now we have an interim government, or a government of national unity, rather. And the lead up to this was sort of spurred by President Sisi again's red line with regards to presence of foreign mercenaries in Sirte, in Libya. So I would say Egypt is on alert. It's still activating its various channels, be it diplomatic or the soft power of cultural exchanges and experts in Africa. Egypt is the only country in Africa that has one embassy in each of the 54 countries in Africa. This is really a very significant concept for Egypt, that any country, be it small or big in Africa, is still something that matters.
Egypt is well represented,
of course, yes.
in it. Yes, indeed. You have spoken about the Dred, or this disputed dam.
Sure.
And the leadership has said that yes, it is a life matter for Egypt, and definitely we are very much into an agreement that would be in the interests of all sides, because we respect all sides, and we will continue on with negotiation as long as it goes in the interests of all parties altogether. A binding agreement, very much indeed, that is
absolutely
an issue that will be of such importance this year, hopefully for the best of Africa at large. You spoke also about Libya, and Libya itself has seen dramatic shifts.
Absolutely.
And Egypt has been in the forefront of helping the Libyans in being able to achieve what they have achieved today. How do you view the Libyan crisis first, and then we'll speak about the Egyptian role?
Well, I think it's finally time to remove the word crisis and to say, the reconciliation. Finally, it was quite surprising that there were not a lot of complications with the recent election of the new unity government, especially since the winning ticket. The winning ticket is backed by my apologies, is used to be pro-Gaddafi. So in the end, it's still the ticket that won. And yet all rivals, including General Haftar, conceded, and accepted the results and congratulated the new government. So it's a very, very encouraging sign. We still have elections that have not been, the laws of the elections have not been determined, and this is supposed to happen at the end of the year.
We're speaking here about the parliament and the election for the head of this of Libya and all this, right?
Yes, this has just been recent.
But let me take it here. Let me just discuss the matter with you. We're speaking here about Libya. Libya is a tribal country. And it was filled of challenges. Ahead of them, or atop of them, were the mercenaries, the foreign troops that have existed in the very past period, the interference of outsiders, plus, of course, the weapons that are extended in every hand, and that is a big issue. Now we're speaking here about certain developments. We've seen the so-called Arab Spring and the killing of Gaddafi, after which the chaotic scene and the no-fly zone, which the NATO started, a situation that was not, or they did not ever end that situation, chaotic scene. Then started the Egyptian rule. And there was two governments, one in Tobruk and one in Tripoli, and that was a disaster in itself, plus a parliament, plus a national Libyan army, plus, of course, mercenaries each to each party. How was I mean, how did that reflect on the Libyan scene, and how did that help in reflecting a kind of failure state? And how did Egypt help Libya regain or strengthening its institutions in order to be able to achieve what it had done today?
Sure. I mean, yes, I think failed state is unfortunately accurate here. They still don't have, I mean...
And we are looking for a strong state in this upcoming...
The new government has a lot of priorities, and the first one is just to restore basic services like electricity.
We'll speak about that.
Okay, sure. There are various layers of work to be done, of course. There are different tracks. There are some that have already started, like the financial, for example, which was a very important issue, because when the rival factions had each its own government in the East and in the West, they also had their own financial institutions. And the question of the oil revenues, of course, in Libya is
and who is control of the oil field and all this? Yes.
So they are now finally, they have they froze the oil revenues and kept it in sort of a temporary ad hoc institution. So it's no longer split between the East and the West. And they don't have a Minister of Defense, however, and this is a big, I mean, they do in the sense that the current president, Prime Minister Dabibi, he's now holding the portfolio of Ministry of Defense. But this is, of course, unsustainable for a Prime Minister and for a country like Libya, which is just now starting to get out.
We're speaking about a transitional council until the
elections. Right. So the elections are at the end of the year, and should they adopt the laws and agree on the election laws in time, hopefully we'll have another positive surprise like we've just had.
Positive surprise.
Positive surprise, yes.
Yes. We don't need any surprise. Okay. Right. Let me here take it from another perspective.
Sure.
Now we're speaking here about a big challenge, the existence of mercenaries, terrorists, plus the existence of some of the foreign hands. How do you view this challenge for Mr. Dabeba? How do you think he will be able to, because this is part and parcel of the of the agreements, of the UN sponsored agreements that led to making this government. How do you view that? How do you view this challenge?
It's a little bit complicated because there are two types of mercenaries or foreign troops or foreign forces in Libya. You have the legal one, let's say. Well, it is legal. It's the Turkish security agreement that it had with Libya.
GNA.
On the one hand, they're still there, and then we have the Russian mercenaries, Wagner group.
Yes, but Russian were there in order to train some of the Libyan army.
They're present. You know, the fact of the matter is, regardless of...
Right, but their existence is just for training, please.
Both are... they both have to leave. I mean, especially the Turkish, because of the threat that it had posed to Egypt, and had it gone to Sirte as it was initially planned, the region would probably look different today. So the mercenary problem is real, and the United States has already called for them to leave the country, to pull out.
I guess that there are some positive moves from the Turkish side those days.
Well, everyone has a positive and a negative side, definitely, yeah.
No, just those days.
Those days, yes.
And we're hoping for reason to come into this situation. Yes, but how would Mr. Dabeba control the situation or be in control? We are aware of the portfolio of Mr. Dabeba. He has the background of an economic man. And he's very well in the issue of development, in the issue of returning back the economic situation. He is good at that. So we're speaking here about a strategic military security, stability, plus political, because Libya also has to deal with the surrounding. How do you view the role of Egypt in trying to help Libya, particularly with international players? We've seen the President speaking to Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister. We've seen the President speaking to France. We've been the President speaking to some of the international partners.
Sure.
So how do you view the Egyptian role?
Pardon me. I mean, Egypt is Libya's neighbor, so there will always be a synergy between the two countries, and the Egyptian government is always going to be present, and President Sisi has indicated that with his past presence in all of the various steps leading to this political reconciliation, but it has also, the government has also pledged to continue this aid as it is required. It has already refugees here in Egypt. That is one of the aspects that links the two countries with regards to this war. And there are many issues like these that continue to drag on. And again, the political settlement is the first step before the rest of this goes away. The political
Don't forget that Libya hosts lots of Egyptian laborers.
Of course. Yes, I have. I've not forgotten. But the situation as it develops, you know, I don't think Egypt is in a reactionary posture. It's very, you know, clear cut from the beginning. This is where the red line is. This is what we will allow and what we will not allow. And anything that is legal and within international law, and be it regional, Egypt, you know, is hosting the Arab League, obviously, and be it on the
Egyptian side,
the African continent. My apologies. Egypt will always have this very, you know, heavy presence politically, and will have a lot of weight without having to resort to, you know, threats of armed conflict or anything like that. So I don't see this as ending anytime soon. On the contrary, I see there are a lot of efforts to really close all of these chapters that are still, you know, dragging on, especially since the Arab Spring.
I wouldn't call it an Arab Spring because we've seen no springs anyway.
Well, I think spring just started yesterday, so there you go.
See our spring, how our spring is very much dusty.
Very particular. It's very unique, indeed.
Wait, getting back to what we were speaking about, and let me speak here again, reiterate the Egyptian role, where Egypt has led all the way. I mean, here we have seen some of the tribal meetings that took place here in Egypt, not only once, but once and twice, and also has hosted many times a kind of neighboring meetings here in Egypt and in Morocco and in Algeria, for all the neighboring countries. And I guess that led in a way or another to a Libyan finding consensus or consensus with all parties. How do you view the diplomatic resolve, or in other way, the soft power of diplomacy of Egypt in resolving conflicts?
Well, full disclosure, my father is a diplomat, so I will not be biased in this answer. But diplomacy is absolutely key. It's the number one power that Egypt has to start negotiations, even on trade or peacekeeping, presence of peacekeeping troops in Africa. It always starts with an embassy, with the dialogue with the local governments, and having seen it front and center, I can tell you it starts with just maybe one letter and leads to something like a national reconciliation government. So it's quite complex and dynamic, but in a very positive way for Egypt. Yes.
So here we're speaking about a diplomacy that is working with world bodies.
Excuse me?
With world bodies.
Sure. Yeah.
You spoke about the Arab League, but the Arab League is a regional body. We're speaking also about the United Nations, which is a world body. We're speaking also about the African Union, which is a world body that represents Africa in a way or another. How do you view the Egyptian role in those, or in promoting and propagating the African causes and the African conflict in the right way in order for those world bodies deal with them?
I mean, like I said before, I think Egypt has sort of this big brother role on account of its political experience, I would say, and historical take on the various events that we've been witnessing in the past decade. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure, actually, if you have something specific in mind when you say the world bodies and Egypt's involvement. Is it for...
We're speaking politically. Egypt was a non-permanent
member
of the UN Security Council.
Sure.
And then it became the chair of the African Union. Egypt is one of the main contributors to the UN forces and, of course, the African Union forces. Egypt has been always on the highest positions of helping all the African countries and regions. We're speaking about Egypt's role in propagating Africa at large, the opportunities in Africa when we're speaking about the economic side.
Absolutely. I have nothing to add to that. No, I absolutely agree. And you will always see Egypt involved in these issues because anything that Egypt does will impact, not just the Middle East, not just Africa. It really does have an impact on account of its various security and political alliances, and the seat at the table for Egypt is I think permanent. Actually,
we need an African seat definitely in the UN Security Council. We are in dire need of that because Africa is a large continent, and this was one of the Egyptian demands that were raised. Also speaking about propagating Africa's causes. The latest was the President's call on the world for Africa's fair share for the pandemic COVID-19.
For the?
COVID-19 shares of vaccination.
Yes.
And right, returning back to what we were speaking about, and we say that Egypt, part of how Egypt helped Libya in maintaining its security or stability was putting some limits to some of the external forces. And what do we expect from those external forces who are on the territories of Libya in this upcoming stage?
Are you speaking about the Turkish forces? I mean, we just had this government sworn in days ago, literally. So the thing is, this new government has, or it will, all of the past agreements that have been done in the past since Gaddafi's demise, will no longer be valid. So, for instance, Turkey, who has a presence, it had an agreement with Libya on. It was a maritime agreement to provide Turkey access to oil in the Mediterranean. It was an agreement with Libya between, right. So this is a very important agreement for Turkey, and this is something that in international law, if you don't have a border with the sea, Turkey is blocked basically here. So is this going to impact on the presence of the Turkish forces, for instance? We don't know. We have to see what
is requested. I'm not speaking about what is, because obviously the situation here is that there should be no presence, because there are no maritime borders, there are no territorial borders, there is nothing that... so what is expected and what is needed from the international community in order to be able to help Libya achieve its stability and security?
Well, I would say the security sector is a very important thing to focus on. If Libya the new government manages to consolidate all of the various factions into one army and is able to provide that security that is now provided by foreigners, then obviously, you know, their presence will be redundant. But we do need the international assistance for the security sector reform, and we can look at other countries to see how that went, and really determine whether actually foreign aid is a better, you know, alternative or not. So to be seen, to be continued, to be determined.
Right, finally here, if I may ask you about Egypt's current foreign policy, and definitely Egypt has pursued a kind of strong and proactive policy, and has regional and strategic, or has protected its regional and strategic interests. As it said here, that its current foreign policy is independent but not isolated. It's strong but not oppressive. So how do you read this?
I'm glad it's not oppressive. This is a positive thing. Again, like I said earlier, Egypt doesn't...
What does it mean, independent but not isolated?
Independent means, you know, it will not accept any foreign influence.
That we have our own...
Of course. Isolated is, again, not something... North Korea is isolated from the international community. Egypt does not want to be isolated from the international community. Does it?
No, of course not. Definitely it does not. In fact, Egypt is open to the whole world.
Exactly.
As long as the relations are built on mutual respect and mutual interests. But this is exactly what I meant here of independent and isolated. And also, how, in one word, do you describe the Egyptian policy? I have only half a minute here.
In one word, encouraging.
2 words.
I would say encouraging. Encouraging, right. Definitely. There's a lot of increased effort, I would say, and it's visible. So good to be continued.
Ms. Maissa Khattab, political researcher, we thank you so much for being with us, and looking forward to have you again. And I guess that takes us to the end of our episode. Many thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be another contentious debate with another colleague. Good night.
Thank you.